Welcome to the Spiritist Companion podcast, your bilingual podcast about Spiritism. I'm very glad to be here today. My name is Yuri Castro, and I'll be your companion on this journey where we will study, reflect, and put Spiritist teachings into practice. If you enjoy what you hear, don't forget to subscribe and tune in every Monday for our weekly episodes. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about something that's very important and sometimes delicate, the relationship between parents and children and how we can honor our parents. As usual, let's start with a message from the Spirit author Emmanuel, psychographed by Chico Xavier. This one is in the book Living Spring, message number 58, and in the specific passage he says, "The life of each conscious person entails a set of duties towards him or herself, the family of souls that gather around his or her sentiments, and towards all humankind." Emmanuel here is already touching on fundamental pieces. So this idea that there is this set of duties that we must honor towards ourselves, but also towards our close family, and towards our family with a capital F, which is all humankind, as we are all children of God. And this idea of honoring your parents came from the Bible. It's one of the 10 commandments, and this one is found on Exodus, where it says, "Honor your father and your mother, so that your days may be long in the land the Lord your God is giving you." But what does honoring truly mean in a spiritist context? And what if our parental relationships are difficult, painful, or even absent? Let's explore these questions with love and clarity, shall we? In chapter 14 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, Kardec presents a deeply moral interpretation of this commandment. He talks about how filial respect goes beyond obedience. He mentions, for instance, gratitude for the opportunity of life, care for the aging parents, and perhaps even most importantly, moral responsibility in the family relationship. He talks about how God willed that bonds of family be the most holy on earth. And to strengthen these bonds, He, God, made respect for parents a duty and one that extends throughout life. And if we go with the Spiritist concept of the immortality of the soul and different lives that we're going to have still, goes even beyond our current lives. He goes further also to say that when parents are flawed or difficult, we still owe them compassion, patience, and forgiveness, because Spiritism teaches us, my dear friends, that we may be linked by past life debts or lessons to learn together. One may even say that if the parents are flawed or very difficult, that's when we truly need to exercise these things that he talked about, like compassion, patience, forgiveness, and all other virtues like that. And according to the Spiritist view of reincarnation, family, the close family, is not a coincidence. No. Those who are placed in our lives, my dear friends, especially parents and children, are often spirits whom we share deep histories, sometimes of love, sometimes of pain, sometimes of both. Joanna de Angelis, who is also another author, wrote Through the Hands of Divaldo Franco, and she's talking about how family is where spirits reunite to heal, to repay, and above all to love once again. And she says that we accomplish this in the sacred school of the home. And we learn that sometimes honoring our parents means learning to forgive them for their imperfections, or sometimes it may mean accepting their limitations and supporting them even when they cannot love us or support us in the same ways that we do or that we wish they did. From a Spiritist perspective, every family bond is an opportunity for spiritual growth, my friends, especially in those difficult parental relationships. And I understand that some of you who are listening to this right now may have experienced neglect or abuse or abandonment for those who are supposed to care for you. So does Spiritism then still ask us to honor in these cases? Spiritism never demands submission to harm, but it invites us to look at the relationship from a spiritual lens and ask questions such as, what can I learn from this experience? Can I forgive without condoning? Can I release resentment to free myself? Emmanuel once again tells us that we may not change our family, but we can change the way we love within it. So the greatest act of honoring, obviously, is not repeating cycles of pain. It's raising our consciousness so that we can break the chain and offer future generations a better example. And that is very important for us to keep in mind. Jesus, our guide and model, offers revolutionary perspectives on family. If we go to Matthew 12, we will see that when somebody came and told him that his brothers and his mother were waiting outside for him, he just turned to the crowd and he said, "Who is my mother? And who are my brothers?" Then he pointed to his disciples and said, "Whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." Of course, those who heard that at the time must have been flabbergasted by his words. But he wasn't rejecting his earthly family. No, he was expanding the concept of spiritual family. Because in Spiritism, we also learn that true family is the one of the soul, and that spiritual bonds are even deeper than biological ones. So honoring father and mother is not only about our biological parents. It includes those who have cared for us, guided us, or even those whom we struggle, because all are part of the divine plan for our progress. And honoring your parents extends to those who take the place of a mother or a father, therefore, because their merit is much greater since their devotion has nothing of obligation. So the commandment, honor your father and your mother, is an inference from the general laws of charity and love towards one's fellow beings, seeing that those who do not love their mother and father cannot then love their fellow creatures. And this is a concept that some may struggle, especially those who come from families of, like I said, of pain, of abuse, of neglect and abandonment. But the reality is this idea that there is charity and there's love involved in honoring your parents, because we cannot love someone else. We cannot say that we are loving creatures and we're charitable when we can't even do that under our own roof. We must remember that God will ask every mother and father out there, "What have you done with the child which was entrusted to you?" And likewise, we will also be asked, "What have you done with the parents that were given to you?" We have to remember that ingratitude is a direct result of selfishness. So what have we done with the parents that were given to us? Because if the children find the parents they need, parents in turn receive what they're looking for in their children. Therefore, my dear friends, we understand that the family is this sort of microcosm of redemptive obligations in which we live to serve the greater family that comprises all humankind. Spiritism, therefore, helps shine a light into these mechanisms that form a family, and we understand that those that are incarnated in the same family, especially as close relations, are as often as not congenial spirits that are linked by past relationships, which we can easily see during their earthly lives by the reciprocated affections and everything that they do out of love for one another. But it can also happen that these people in the same family are former enemies. And also, it could be that they are complete strangers to each other, distant from each other due to past aversions, and that's why it makes it harder for some of them to be able to reconcile, to be able to truly get along. In the Spirits book, we have on question 204, asking whether our relationships extend beyond our present existence, of course going from the assumption that we've had multiple lives before. And the spirits will answer us by saying, "It cannot be otherwise. The succession of the corporeal existences, establish among spirits a variety of relationships which date back from their former existences. The doctrine of reincarnation, therefore, my dear friends, it does not destroy the family ties by putting perhaps former enemies under the same roof. No, it is quite the opposite. We learn that it extends those ties. It does not destroy them. And that's another very hopeful message that we get from Spiritism. This idea that these ties are going to be extended, are going to be strengthened. On question 775 of the Spirits book, they also ask what would be the effect upon society of the relaxation of family ties. And the spirits will answer that it would be a relapse into selfishness. And as we always talk about in Spiritism, selfishness and pride, the two scourges of our moral development, the two greatest barriers that we still face in our path for this moral development. So the relaxation of family ties, therefore, would be a relapse into something that we're trying to conquer, something we're trying to overcome. And I understand, relationships can sometimes be very complicated. So how can we honor our parents then? So let's go to a practical side here. And I brought a few pieces that we can utilize in this jigsaw puzzle to honor our parents. Number one, we can express gratitude. Because even if our parents failed in some ways, they were the channel through which we entered this world. Everybody who is alive was born of someone. So a simple prayer of thanks can shift our vibration from bitterness to peace. If your parents are still alive, a call, a visit, a word of kindness can mean more than you imagine, especially for those parents in the aging years. Number three, forgiveness. Remember, forgiving is not forgetting. We've done an episode on forgiveness. It is liberating yourself and opening space for peace so that our love can shine through. Number four, we can think of prayer. If your parents are in the spirit world, you can still honor them through your actions, through what you do here on earth, but also you can honor them, send them love through the wings of a prayer. The message, therefore, is pretty clear, no? No matter how hard everything is, no matter how complicated, we must do all those things that we talked about to honor our parents so that we don't fall back into strengthening, bolstering our own selfish tendencies. Family, my dear friends, must be seen as this sort of spiritual workshop because our families are not random. They are carefully chosen by divine wisdom, through divine wisdom, as part of our spiritual curriculum, let's call it. So to honor our father and our mother is to recognize that life placed us together for a reason, that every act of understanding, patience, kindness is therefore a step toward healing, a step toward progress. Remember, my dear friends, every family is a school and each home is a classroom, perhaps the most important of all. So may we learn the lesson of love where we are. We reached the end of our episode today. Thank you so much for joining me in this reflection, where we talked about the Spiritist teachings applying to the most important school of all, our family, and how we can go about honoring our parents. I hope this message was useful, even if just a little. So if that was the case, I invite you to share it with someone who could also benefit from it. Until next Monday, stay well, stay kind, and keep walking in the light of Spiritism. With fraternal love, your Spiritist companion.